morning, wherever you are in the art world. So we are delighted, the Art Talks are delighted to welcome you all for another inspiring Art Talk. And tonight we are welcoming Elizabeth von Habsburg, founder and managing director of the Winston Art Group, and of course, Nanne Dekking, CEO of Artory. Good evening. How are you? Good afternoon. So Elizabeth and Nanne will discuss the art investment landscape, the blockchain, the use of blockchain in the art market, and their innovative collaboration. So I would love for you, Nanne and Elizabeth, to share this wonderful project, if you and welcome again to the Art Talks.
Thank you so much, Carolina. Shall I jump in?
Yeah, thank you, Carolina. Yeah, perfect.
Thank you. It's lovely to see you. Yes, I would love if you could actually give us a glimpse before we can start to make all our audience understand a bit better. A brief presentation of what is this wonderful collaboration.
Shall I pull it up? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Pulling that up, I just want to say that Nanne and I have both been deeply embedded in the art world for a couple of decades. We don't like to say exactly how long. And we've noticed increasingly recently the barriers to entry that are keeping both collectors and those who want to invest in art away from the art market. And that includes how to mitigate risk, the lack of liquidity, the lack of tradability of art on a regular basis, the lack of due diligence, checks and balances, external independence. And all of these factors led us to start talking about the idea of doing a tokenized art fund. And we're really passionate about this project. We would love to hear your thoughts after we run through some slides.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so again, thank you so much. And I'm so happy to sit here with Liz. I've been in the Art Talks quite often by myself. And I think we fit right into the Art Talks because ultimately what we're talking about is art. And as you know, I've been working so hard for many years to make sure that credible information about artworks could be captured using blockchain technology, not for the fun of using technology, but for the reassurance of information, as long as it's coming from the right partners. And as you know, Artory never has any opinion. Well, we do have opinions, but we make sure that the opinions that are carved out in the blockchain are actually always coming from people who are willing to come out as the creator of the information. You know, we don't accept information from people who don't want to say who they are, and we always work with trusted partners who sign off on all the information. So there couldn't be, to my opinion, a better person in the world and a better group in the world than Winston Art Group, because that has always been since the day that they started to do their business, is to do a lot of due diligence to make sure that the information that they create and the opinion that they form is as unbiased and as neutral and as possible. So
yes. And Nanne, before you start, I think, you were saying in one of your presentations that all started while you were walking with Elizabeth through art fairs. And, you look at a piece and I think this is beautiful because, as I said, sometimes we want to look at the piece with our heart, with the passion, and sometimes we have to think rationally. So this is something that I would love you to share.
Sure. What we would love to do is to guide you through the structure of the fund. Mm-hmm. This is all completely transparent. Everything that you will see, you can look back, you can look at the offerings. It's all online. There's nothing hidden here. So let's start with guiding you through the fund, and we're looking forward to a real conversation as well. So maybe you want to start with this.
Sure. Yeah. So just to start and put it all in perspective, it's clear that right now is a really interesting time to look at art as an investable asset class. If you look at the chart there, you see that from 2000 on, the top works of art by the top artists, according to Art Price 100, have well outperformed the S&P. So it's a really interesting time to think about how to make this asset class something that is, as I said before, transparent and tradable, and something that both institutional investors and private collectors feel comfortable jumping in to invest in.
Yeah, and I believe what is really important to understand when you look at these statistics is that it's actually based on the art that was traded. So not all artworks are tradable, and definitely not all artworks are always tradable. And that's why I feel when you create these kind of funds, you have to work with people who really understand the dynamics of the art market and who really understand the underlying asset, which is an artwork. So that's actually where, to my opinion, Winston comes in, but we're definitely going to talk more about that. So when you start to present art as an investable asset class, and it's not anymore because one person loves to buy an artwork. There's actually the love affair that takes place. There's also some rationale because most people buy art with the hope that it will become more valuable in the future. But still, if you create an art fund where the only task is, as the people who build up the fund, who set up the fund, is to make sure that the investors take as less risk as possible, and that whatever is being bought for the fund has the biggest chance to appreciate in value. So to do that, we thought, apart from the art, and we're definitely going to talk a lot about the art, we have to make sure that we create a regulatory framework that is rock solid, and that this is actually a fund that is administered. It's not a self-administered fund, it's completely regulated. So it's a diversified fund, and we will dive much deeper into that. But the Artwork Fund is actually administered by Apex Group. Apex is the largest fund administrators in the world. So here again, everyone, we try to surround ourselves to secure this regulatory framework with reputable firms, right? We have as auditors by specialties, the artwork custodian, Volvo. We're definitely going to talk more about the artwork custodian as well, and why it is important for these kind of funds that you have a custodian. Of course, with Winston having such a big role in sourcing the artworks, which we will discuss later, there's of course also an independent appraiser. The independent appraiser will actually do appraisals once a year to inform the investors. And then there's the whole regulatory framework, which you can really look up yourself. If you go into the offerings, there's the Artory Winston website, and we will guide you through that. But for this conversation, it's good to understand what we're mostly going to talk about is the Diversified Artwork Fund. But we also have a single artwork offering on Republic, which for us is a very, very fun project. It's different than the huge diversified artwork funds that we're creating, but this is more what you call a Reg S offering, where people for crowdsourcing, where people for a very low amount can invest in a single artwork. And that's currently at Republic. Maybe it's, yeah.
At $250. So we've had a lot of buy-in in that. That's a lot of fun. It's more of a kind of a new investor, a young collector, or somebody who just wants to have part of a known artist.
Yeah. But two completely different kind of audiences, I feel, and also two completely different kind of offerings. So maybe let's start with the art side, because ultimately the underlying asset of such a fund is the most important part. Yeah.
Right. And in addition, obviously, to sourcing the works of art, the most important thing to give credibility to the works of art is to do an extensive due diligence procedure. And that's what we do at Winston Art Group. We have a rubric of over 50 aspects that we look at for each work of art that we're intending to potentially purchase. And we've listed on the right side some of those, some of the most major factors that we're looking at. Obviously, condition, provenance, you can read them there. But in addition to the normal ones that you think about, we also look at who's representing the artist now, and who do we think is going to represent them in the future. Is there a change going on between a smaller emerging artist gallery to a larger international gallery? Has the work been in any museum exhibitions, or indeed has it been collected by any museums? Which private collections is that work in? And we look also very importantly at anti-money laundering and know your client factors, that we want to make sure that anything that we're purchasing is coming from a reputable and very clean source.
Oh, why is it not going further? There we go. Right.
Okay, so in addition to the due diligence process, the other big factor, of course, is how do we source works of art? Winston Art Group has appraised over the past several years about 150,000 works of art. And per annum, we're appraising around $10 billion worth of art, in addition to doing around 100 million or more in transactions every year. But Winston Art Group is independent of any auction house or dealer. We don't loan against art. We are completely our clients' advocates. So this gives us both the independence and also the access to art that is relatively unique in the art market. In other words, if there's some very hot emerging artist, chances are that we'll be at the top of the list for that particular gallery, so we can get our hands on something before other collectors. And these are just some examples here of how we've been able to source works of art and turn them over in a relatively short period of time to ensure that those are works of art that have increased in value over time and been really exciting investments for our clients. So just to tell you that we like our clients, Carolina was talking about passion versus rationality. We love our clients to be the passionate collectors, but we're behind the scenes, both we and Artory, to be the rational due diligence, the boring part of the whole process, to make sure that what they're investing in or collecting is something that will maintain its value and hopefully increase in value over time.
What I particularly like about Winston is, as many of you know, I'm actually coming from the art market, various roles in the art market, as a private dealer, as a dealer, then at an auction house at Sotheby's. But what I know is so important is to have actually a continued relationship with the dealer communities. Yes. and with the dealers, because the dealer may be the perfect place to buy an artwork, but the dealer can very often also be the perfect person to tell you in a few years' time, I sold you that artwork, but I actually have a client for it. And that for the fund is very important, that you work with people who know the community, who know the gallery community. You want to make sure that you engage with these folks, with that community, because that's ultimately very helpful for the fund. We're not saying we will never sell at auction, of course not, if there's a good reason to sell at auction, which, by the way, sometimes can help the gallery as well to establish a certain price level. But there has to be engagement with, it's not only sourcing artworks, it's not just buying an artwork at auction and then try to sell it to investors. It's a continuous engagement with the people from whom you source the artworks with. That can be a private collector as well, in the case of Winston Art Group. So maybe a little bit about anticipated fund composition. Liz will, of course, talk about this. But if you look at this, if you look at from a financial point of view, it's all about risk mitigation. And I think that's the important part.
Yeah, and we're intending for the first fund to have approximately 65 works of art split between blue chip, so we have a steady growth in those ones, mid-career, which has a slightly faster growth rate, and emerging artists, which have the potential for quite extraordinary growth rates over time. So again, as Nanne said, risk mitigation is so important to anyone who's investing in any asset class, and this is the way we are helping to mitigate the process.
And what me impresses a lot working with Liz and the team, and my team is working very closely with the Winston team as well, is to see how detailed all the information is. If you look at a few of the potential candidates for artists to be included in the fund, that's not just an idea. That's based on monitoring these artists. I see whole lists passing by. That's the gallery where it is now. Those are the art fairs where we have to go to. Again, it's completely understanding the underlying asset that is being traded in a fractionalized way soon. So let's look a little bit under the hood. For those who've heard me talk in the past about Artory, I always talk about art, right? I always talk about the fact that credible information about an artwork coming from independent sources is usually the most important factor that creates value for an artwork. And that has always been to the core of what Artory has been doing. We were the first to work with Christie's. We all, most likely people here on the call at least, will remember that the Absworth collection was the first auction that was recorded in the blockchain. And after that, we did other projects with Christie's. We were the first to have an auction on the blockchain. We were the first to actually have decorative art with Steinitz and Christie's on the blockchain. And we were also the first company that actually had living artists cryptographically sign off on the blockchain as well. So credible information is what we're after. Credible means that Christie's and Steinitz, for example, for this sale, were willing to sign off on all the due diligence that they had done. So here we had two due diligence partners. We had Steinitz, who came up with an incredible sale called the provenance sale, because Steinitz felt that, and of course they're right, good provenance of, for example, an antique desks gives you much more reassurance in the authenticity of the piece. So provenance of these pieces is important. Their due diligence was, of course, also checked by Christie's, and now you have two partners signing off on information.
Can I jump in for a second?
Sure, yeah, please.
Just a quick thing to add as to why this is so important. Artory is by putting this due diligence certificate on the blockchain, they're creating trust in particular works of art that makes those works of art stand out and makes them much more desirable. So if you have two fabulous pieces of French furniture, one that has its provenance and one that doesn't have its provenance on the blockchain, you're going to look quite closely at the one who has its immutable record on the blockchain, because that gives the market a lot of confidence that that work is what it's supposed to be and that it will go up in value over time.
Yeah, so in this particular example, we didn't create any content. I think companies like Artory shouldn't create content. They should capture content that's checkable, factual, at least coming from very clear from who created that information. What we did is we created in the end a token, and that was the token that Christie's could hand out to their clients. We don't have direct relationship with these clients, as we shouldn't. We work. It's an under the hood service that we deliver to Christie's in this case. What really made me enthusiastic is that the Galerie Steinitz was so enthusiastic with this whole collaboration. You can imagine blockchain technology, the creation of tokens, capturing due diligence information is not something they had done before. And they were very happy that we had created this everlasting link between the piece, its authenticity, and the provenance. And they actually felt that the success of the sale had much to do with the fact that we were involved. An amazing collaboration. And I like these kind of projects a lot. So let's go under the hood for a while. In the end, yes, it's technology, but what made this technology so successful? What really made this technology successful, if you would have been here in the office, and you would have seen over the last 6 months, my team working together with the team that does due diligence at Winston. Every step on the way was recorded by us in the blockchain. And here you can see, if you just go through the fact, you know that we have this platform, you know that Winston will do the sourcing, and ultimately there are just human beings doing all the research as good as they can. And they sign off on all that information. Ultimately, this signs off on the information, or the head of that department that created the information. And that's what we capture. And what we capture, and I have to wear my glasses these days, is the due diligence certificate that we have been creating already for 4 or 5 years. We were the first to do that. And that due diligence certificate is a smart contract. Most of you know what a smart contract is, but it's important that the due diligence should be amended with the new events that are happening in the life cycle of that artwork. So, for example, the artwork is now at ROVO. A condition report was created. All these kind of things need to be recorded because that's ultimately what creates the reassurance that everything is fine with the artwork. So not only the due diligence, the history, all the literature references, everything that Liz and the group have done, the condition, all these things are captured, but also the more logistical things that happen to the artwork, which is important for the fund. Then there's an NFT created. We were the first to create NFTs that referred to physical art and not became a digital artwork. By the way, Liz and I are both fans of the NFT market as well, and we do believe that there is an outstanding group of artwork NFTs, so to say, that are worth tracking and looking at and be taken seriously as a form of art. But that's not what we've done for this fund. And we've created NFTs that refer to the physical artworks. And then the combination of the two, of the smart contracts and the NFT that represents the artwork, that can all be captured in a token that then can become a tradable token. We can go much more deeper than that, but there's what's important to know. Unfortunately, these days, these artworks need to be always in a very secure custody. Again, we can talk about that because we're looking at ways that we can actually make sure that there can be other exposure for the artwork as well. But these tokens will represent a percentage of what you own, just a share of what you own in the diverse artwork portfolio that was created by Winston Art Group. And we will go much deeper into this in the conversation, I guess. It's good to know there are 2 ways to invest in the fund, but that's something that we can discuss somewhere else. Oh, anyway, yeah. So what we need to understand, there's 2 ways to invest in the fund. One is actually by buying tokens in the fund, but there's also a traditional way to just buy shares into the fund. That maybe as the high level. Yes, please.
So
yeah.
just to make that differentiation and just to reinforce that we are not selling art NFTs.
Right.
So these are just representations on the blockchain of physical objects. So we're not taking an artist's work and changing it at all. It's just a token that actually is tradable, and that is one of the things that we wanted to mention that makes our fund different from any other fund that's out there. That is that the investors who buy the tokens will, after a year of holding those tokens, be able to trade them. And this makes the institutional investors really happy because rather than having their money tied up for 5 to 7 years, they will have the opportunity, if they want to trade and cash out after a year. That's the tradable tokens. As Nanne said, the other option for investors who don't want to deal with tokens is to buy normal shares of that diversified art fund.
Yeah, so the master fund is the fund where you can invest in shares, just buy shares. And the tokenized fund is a feeder fund into Securitize. And that's where you can buy tokens representing the shares that you will have in the fund. And everything, what we just said, is out there. You can just read it at the Artory Winston website. There are many links to the actual offerings. All the offerings are completely transparent. Fee structure, everything is completely transparent. No hidden fees whatsoever. And as I said, the regulatory framework is sound, and it's an administered fund, and we're not administering ourselves. So maybe that as a starting point before we start talking. Yeah.
Thank you, Nanne. Thank you. It was a wonderful, wonderful presentation. Thank you, Elizabeth. So I was wondering for everybody, so the summarizing what distinguishes Artory and Winston from all the other, there is players in the. Can you summarize You already said it, but maybe you can go ahead.
Happily. So I think we just sort of quickly name the different factors that make us different. Yes. One is the network that we have, the high standards of due diligence that we do, the independence and internal expertise that we have, coupled with the external appraisals that are done not by Winston Art Group, but by an external organization. These due diligence certificates that Nanne was mentioning that go onto the blockchain. The regulatory framework, which is so intensely scrutinized and so strong, and it's an external managed fund, so we're not managing ourselves. Everything that we do, everything that we want to purchase always has to be approved by the external managers. And then the secondary trading platform. This is new to the art market and really exciting for those who want to trade their shares over time.
Thank you. Thank you. I think, before we ask anybody else, also the process of buying. So how does it start, Nanne? The process of buying artworks for the fund. Can you walk us through again a little bit, summarizing? You
Sure.
did it already before, but maybe, just because now we can see you.
Right. So the funds need to be raised, right? That's how it starts. The first fund is actually a relatively small fund. It's $25 to $35 million. It's going really well. The moment the funds are raised, then the money can be spent by the Winston Art Group and the team. And they have a whole master plan in place in what kind of art they will buy. As you saw, right, the diversification of the fund is very, very important. We're not buying art, or I'm not buying art. I'm not buying any art, by the way, but I'm not, personally I would, but not for the fund. We're not buying art for one collector with a very specific goal. One collector can make a very clear choice why he or she would like to buy a certain artwork. And part of that decision-making is rational decision-making. When you buy for an art fund, you're buying for people who don't necessarily know the value of art. So you have a huge responsibility to buy the right kind of art, or at least the kind of art that has the biggest chance to gain value in the running time of the period of the fund. And also to make sure that you don't take risk. Liz and I talk about this the whole day because we are obsessed with our profession, and that's art, huh? I mean, listen, I may be in charge of a tech company, but ultimately the two of us really are very passionate about art. And I've made decisions in the past to tell collectors to buy a really important old master painting. As many people know, I know a lot about old master paintings, and especially Italian 15th and 16th century paintings. But would I necessarily tell with the hat of a fund manager, buy an old master painting? I'm not saying there's never an old master painting you can buy. And by the way, it is something people should buy, but we have a different responsibility now. We know, for example, certain old master painters have only 3 or 4 people who can form an opinion on that certain painter or artist. And these opinions sometimes shift and can change, which can be your personal risk you want to take, but that's not a risk we can put into the fund or into the people investing in the fund. And by the way, this is more subtle than what we just said. There are definitely old master paintings that we potentially will consider in the future. Of course, it's not a market that shouldn't exist, but we have to be very careful in the decisions we currently make. And I think the way that Liz and her group has thought about the diversification of the first fund, also bear in mind price, the size of the fund, is that they came up with a very strategic way to diversify the risk in the buildup of the fund.
Incredible. Thank you. No, we can, every time you talk, we understand even more. And I think now we can ask, and I love, in any case, by the way, your background, it's beautiful. Are these part of your venture? No.
This is Liz's office.
That's the passion side of my collecting.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. But I think we have many people that would like to, and I think Michael would like to ask a question. We can start our Q&A if you like, before asking more questions.
Well, I have 100 questions, and
1, 2.
but
Okay.
I'll ask the first one. How do you make money?
How do we make money?
Yeah, I don't quite understand. You're providing a lot of services, but at the end of the day, who's paying for it? Is it Christie's that's paying for it? Are the collectors paying for it?
Yeah, Michael, of course we make money with the fund. It's, by the way, completely transparent how much we make. If you look
that's not the question. I don't really care how much you make. I'm just curious what the process is and where in the system you're charging fees or you get in. I mean, obviously you need money to buy works of art. And I'm assuming that comes from your clients. And then I'm assuming also you charge fees for the due diligence when you want to provide blockchain information.
No, actually, it's much more simple than that. We raise the money from investors. We go out and purchase the works of art. Each year of the 5-year fund, with the possibility of extending 1 and then another year to 7 years. Each year we get a very small management fee, and at the end we get a percentage of the fund after expenses are already deducted. Okay. So it's very simple, very clear way. There are no other hidden charges.
But a very good question, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, you're in business, and the art business has changed enormously. I mean, I can't say that I'm 100% behind what you're doing, because for me, the risk taking in buying art is part of the deal. I don't know that the people who were shopping in Paris in 1895 were worried about investments, and they saw things that were interesting, and they were moved by them, and they bought them. I don't know that they were looking at them as investments. We tend to do that in this country, and I worry about that, because having bought for a corporation for a number of years, I was very concerned about the money being well spent because it wasn't my money. On the other hand, I could not guarantee that everything we bought was going to go up in value.
Right. Actually, we share that sentiment. Yes, there is. The reality is that a lot of people are looking at art as an asset class, and to diversify their investment portfolios. There are actually quite a few collectors with a lot of money who have the right team around them, the right access to the market to make well-informed decisions. But that's a very small group of people. It's actually the group of people where I used to work for and with a lot of passion, and I think I made many good decisions for my clients, and sometimes wrong decisions. That's the risk that you take. We're not saying there is never a risk when you buy art, but if you do it on behalf of people who don't necessarily know the market and want to take part of it as a diversifier for their asset portfolio, to have 5% or 10% in an alternative asset class, it can actually be a good diversifier for your portfolio. But then if you do it with that one and sole intention to make sure that you don't lose your money and hopefully make money, we never say this is the kind of investment which is 100x, right? Then you should take riskier investments. But we do feel there is definitely a market there, and with the right kind of information and knowledge of a very complicated marketplace, we feel that we can really create substantial funds for people and an investment opportunity. Would we tell anyone put 100% of your complete net worth in the fund? No, most likely not, because there are other opportunities here and there which are riskier, but where you can maybe make more money. It's an existing market. There are art funds being created. We're looking at the space, and we feel that we want to do it hopefully right. We feel that we're doing it right. And we also surrounded ourselves with a structure where people can keep us honest as well, right? Which I think is quite unique in the whole proposition. It's first of all, you mentioned Christie's. I love Christie's. I was at Christie's yesterday. I know most people at Christie's, but they're not creating an art fund.
No, I understand that.
because as we all know, if they can successfully sell an artwork, that's their business, they will do it. And if they would also be creating an art fund, then I would be a little bit worried. Is this the work that they couldn't sell? And I have open conversations with Christie's about this, right? I mean, we know them so well. So I think that if you want to invest in an art fund, you really have to look at who are the people who are behind this, who are buying art, which money are they using? Are they trying to sell their own art? Are they buying art themselves? And if they are buying art themselves, do they really know the market very well? I count myself very lucky as someone who very much believes in certified information about artworks to have met Liz and her group already a very long time ago. I mean, we were not even thinking about tokenization. We didn't even know the word when we started working, but we come from different parts of the art market. Liz, for example, when I worked at Wildenstein, would often come on behalf of her clients to check me out. What is Nanne Dekking telling to those clients? I think I'm honest, but it's always good for a client to know that there is actually an appraisal firm, independent people who check the trust information that I share with the client.
Can I ask one more question, which was for me as an art historian, is very interesting. Once you have all the provenance information and the written information, the critical information about a work of art, that is what goes into that token, I guess. Which is part of the blockchain. Supposing there's new information, new discovery, a new article, how I mean, I'm assuming you have to redo that, or how does that work?
That's the smart contract part. And I realize this is for me as a simple art historian, it takes a CTO as we have, Tim Kompanchenko, who's so good in explaining these kind of things. The smart contracts can be amended. You can add information to it.
Okay, all right.
And that's the part.
But you can't change what's in there.
Right, exactly. You can add to it, but once it's established, it stays. But you might discover who the portrait is by, or you might discover a drawing related to the painting, or something like that. Okay.
And the good thing is we have auditors, as you saw we actually have not just an auditor, but really one of the best auditors. Blockchain information is great for auditors because nothing can be changed, nothing can be manipulated. So there's a track record. You can look at who said what at a certain moment in the life cycle.
Right. No, it's very good.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you to you. Thank you to you. So I will, Francois, because I know you are to jump to another call. So would you like to ask anything to Nanne and Elizabeth?
Yes. So of course, this is the first time we speak, Nanne and Elizabeth. We I have no idea what you guys do. I'm actually going to kill two birds with one stone because I'm looking at the thread here, and there's tons of questions. And there's one by Rufus Lane that I like a lot, and I was going to ask is, are the artworks that are purchased exhibited at any point, or are they just kept in a vault for the period that you're holding them?
You, me? Yeah, we would love that. But we have to deal with a very strict regulatory framework where the regulators don't necessarily want these artworks to be on display. They want them to be in the safest place possible, which Liz and the team have decided is currently Volvo, with whom they are collaborating. But we are actually talking to regulators. These are human beings as well, right? In trying to explain that there are different ways of displaying art. If there's an artwork that go on loan to an exhibition, we would of course like to do that. And we also of course are thinking about digital ways to share information about an artwork. You know, everybody talks about Web3, but of course Web3 is very much part of what we're working with as well. If people have a digital wallet and the trust information in the tokens lives in this digital wallet, you can create an experience that people can see the artworks. But the actual artworks should be seen as well, not for everyone. You know, nobody wants to take that much risk. I don't think anyone investing in the fund would like these artworks to be at Macy's, to be seen by thousands and thousands of people at the same time. But we're thinking about a very choreographed and responsible way that we can also invite investors to look at the works. Yeah.
Well, and one would argue that if you have a work of art that goes into a show or into a museum for a period of time, that also helps increase the value of the investment, right? So that's something that
Definitely.
can't be ignored.
Definitely. And that, Francois, is why I'm so passionate about the relationship with Winston. Is I've been working a lot with museums as a professional, but Winston works with museums as well. This is the first time that these kind of funds are created. And if you do it with the right network, you can even, and that would also benefit the investors, start to communicate with museums. Is there a missing piece in your collection? Is there anything that we can acquire with the fund? And if at that time the regulator becomes more comfortable in having these artworks, not only in custody somewhere in a secured location, but also in a very secure museum, then dialogues can exist, which can benefit the investor, can benefit the museum, and can benefit the fund, step by step.
Yes, Francois, I think Alina Akashosa would like to say, she wrote many great questions. I don't know if Alina would like to intervene, or we can read it.
So, you know, I've always seen the pictures of you two guys together like this, but I think after this art talk, I'm going to refer to you guys as to the art twins. It's actually incredible how well you work with each other. It's fantastic.
And then we create digital twins, Francois. Yeah.
Right?
Those we're going to tokenize. Yeah.
And another question that I think is very interesting, actually, from Alina in the chat, and this kind of goes back to another thing where we've had conversation in the past about these fractionalized art funds, right? And how they can be done well and not so well. You guys have, you know, clearly, very clearly thought through all the potential pitfalls and the roadblocks that could happen. But one of the questions is, how do you think the rise of multiple ownership, fractionalized ownership funds will modify the art market?
I'll jump on that one. I think what excites me about it is that it broadens the pie. It increases the number of people who are able to participate in the art market, and it lessens the risk for them or the worry. You know, the auction houses can be intimidating to a lot of people, as can the major galleries. So this really gives people a chance to participate without the fear of making a mistake or the fear of jumping in.
I think it's very similar to what we saw in real estate with Reg A investments and opening it. I think it's actually a very fair way of doing it. And in addition, we've had conversation, Nanne, right, in the past, where we talk about how people listen to music and they don't need to understand the music to appreciate it. They can read a book and they don't need to understand the movement to appreciate it. But with art, to your point, Elizabeth, there's still that, let's call it elitism, for lack of a better word, right? With auction houses, very large galleries. But I think this is what's great about what you guys are doing. It's kind of making it available to everybody and saying, you can actually purchase art. You don't need to understand it. You just need to love it. And that's absolutely fantastic. I love that. So this is what I like about what you guys do. And we've had many conversations. So I had a good idea. Actually seeing the presentation, it's really well thought through. I mean, this is really impressive.
Well, Francois, what I find so interesting is, well, Liz and I are extremely young, as you know, but we're not 25 anymore. So we have done all.
So I understand.
Now you should say you're not 25 anymore. No, but we have seen the market developed. We've been part of it, and thank God, both at a specific echelon of the market where you have a little bit of overview. What we want to bring these investors is it is an intimidating environment. It's an environment where you often are afraid to make a mistake. There's nothing worse than having an artwork in your room and guests come in and they think, oh my gosh, did he or she buy that? But we want to make sure that we engage and have the power to engage with the dealer community, because the dealer community is also, and the gallery owners are also part of the ecosystem that can benefit from this, because there's now more money also going into there's more money available to buy art, but they can also be very important for the fund to sell the art at a certain moment. It's a real relationship network that you need to be able to curate this and choreograph this in a responsible way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And everyone has their role. The auction house has their role. The gallery has their role. The living artist has their role. And that's the landscape that we're monitoring and have been part of for such a long time.
Yeah, I'm just looking at all the different questions that we have here. So one of the question is, how do the tokens and the more conventionally sold shares interact? The tokens can be tracked publicly on a blockchain, but the other shares have less transparency, and that's from Rufus Lane.
Rufus Lane, what a good question. So the tokens are traded not by us, right? That's one of the other things. We're not trading our own fund. We're working with Securitize if it comes to the tokenized trading. So they have their own accredited investor base. These tokens after a year holding period. And again, these are the tokens. This has nothing to do with the due diligence tokens. These are the tokens that make the asset tradable. So your investment in tokens in the fund. Those tokens can be traded after a year holding period within the ecosystem of Securitize. We don't have a clear view of that, right? That's the trading platform that does it. So to compare that to the more traditional investors who through the master fund can buy shares into the fund, how transparent is it? No, we don't necessarily know who buys the shares, but what we do know is they come in as accredited investors, AML, KYC, everything has been done. The fund administrator is Apex, which is trillions of assets being administered by them. They had never taken on an art project. They were very reluctant. Liz and I they were happy to see that at least we were two people with a certain track record. But what we're doing today is what we had to do with them as well, to explain this is how we're going to do this, and we want to do this in the correct way. And I'm actually very proud that we got Apex to be the fund administrators. That says something about the regulatory framework that we have created, which was painful. And
hi, this is Phoebe Williams. I'm calling from.
Oh,
sorry?
Let me try and.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, Nanne.
No, but you know that the regulatory framework was not a joke. This has not been done this way before. But what we now see, if big institutional investors look at the offering, they actually feel that the whole regulatory framework is solid. The only questions we get so far is for institutional investors, the first fund is not big enough. Yeah. But well, that's okay. That's the problem we have then. But that's a better problem to have than that someone would shoot holes in the regulatory framework that we have created.
So now that there's really two ways where I'm sorry, I'm sort of thinking this through as I listen to you guys, right? There's really two ways of the value of the artwork to increase. The first one would be linked to the actual value of the artist on the art market, right? Which is typically what we see. But then there's also going to be a second one, because if you can trade the tokens, the way they're traded could also have a secondary effect on the artwork and on the fund, right? How do you deal with that? Because you really have two different things that you have to take into consideration when you look at the fluctuation of the token.
So that's a great question. Because we have external appraisers, they're looking at the whole market. They're looking at the traded market. They're looking at the auction and private sale and dealer market. So they're looking at all the markets when they're valuing these works each year. And also there was another way, and that is that after the initial investment period is closed, If we see an opportunity in year 2 or year 3 or year 4 to trade, to sell one of the works of art that's in the fund, we will do that. And after the investment period, that money is then distributed to both the token holders and the shareholders.
But to Francois, absolutely. But
Yeah.
to Francois' point as well, how will the secondary trading of the tokens affect the market? That just started, right? I mean, I know everybody's talking about secondary trading of tokens. We firmly believe in it. But to make a very bold statement now how that will actually affect even the prices of the artworks, ultimately, let's have that conversation in a year from now when these kind of things start, right? It's listen, we're so close to that whole space. I'm looking at it, but I don't want to be the guy who makes predictions on the value of the fund based on the fact that secondary trading will take place.
I think it's super interesting. And
definitely, yeah.
If it was,
What do you mean by secondary trading of tokens? I don't understand.
What's that? Yeah.
So if for those who are investing in tokens, after a year period of holding those tokens, they can go back onto the Securitize platform and they can sell their tokens to any of the other accredited investors that are hundreds of thousands of them that are on the Securitize platform. And then they can withdraw.
Okay. All right. Okay.
The way of getting liquidity out of the fund prior to the end of the fund date.
So those tokens are but those tokens represent fractional investments in specific funds or works of art.
In the whole fund.
In the whole fund.
basket.
In the whole fund. Okay. All right. I got it. Like trading baseball cards. I get it.
I love it. Yeah.
Actually, so this is where it gets really interesting. If it was tokens per work of art, I think the result would be different because it would be directly correlated to the value of the artwork. But because it's a fund, it probably evens out, right? And it's literally going to be the overall value. So for the investors, do they have a dashboard of the performance of the fund and being able to see not just the overall fund, but also how every individual artist within that fund is performing?
Yeah, there are, well, maybe we can add one element to the fund that we haven't discussed yet, and that is the database. Artory has the largest data set in the world if it comes to transaction data. We're definitely now for the first time using these data with also knowledge how these data cannot always give you information. It's very much how is an artist traded a lot? Is it a large oeuvre? Are there multiples in place, etc.? But the data set is fantastic. And we can make risk profiles on artists that go into the fund. Next to that, there's a private data set, and I don't look at that at all. I can't. But there's, of course, market knowledge with Winston, different kind of data. But we can create with our data set risk profiles on artists that can help the Winston team to make a decision as well. That can ultimately, of course, also be shared with the investor. But here, again, we don't want to overpromise. I'm a firm believer that all the information you have should be shared. But we also know, knowing the market, if every artwork that you collect as a fund is public, then the chances of resale become slimmer because the market likes fresh pieces. So again, do we try to hide something? No, but every investor in the fund will know that there was information captured and they know who signed off on that information. And certain pieces we will explain, we cannot share that and we will not share it. And that's to your benefit that we won't share it. You don't want to be walking on the street. Now my English is losing me, but a window display with always the same thing is very boring. And after a while, you don't want to buy that suit anymore. So we're not going to be showing these artworks over and over again. No, we're responsible people. We can give exposure to certain artworks because they are actually asked at a very important exhibition. That's not overexposure. but an artwork that's not sold, that can be seen by many people for a long period of time, is dead, as we say in the art market. So that we share the fact that there is an attestation of that artwork, that you can see who created that attestation, what's the value of that artwork. We can even directly tell you what kind of art it is. And we have an independent appraiser who tells you every year, well, this is where we feel that the value of the artwork is.
Excellent. Very, very good. Let me
Thank you. Yes, we have so many questions actually in the chat, and I hope that anybody could actually ask, because they are one after the other. So Francois, the last question from, I think from Rufus, and then I will ask Erica to come over. She has lots of questions too.
Actually, I have to jump off. I'm so sorry. But I just made you host. Thank you so much, guys, again. If you hear anywhere in the on the internet, social media, talking about the art twins, just know that I'm talking about Nanne and Elizabeth.
Okay, thank you, Francois. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. This was great. Thank you very, very much.
See you soon, Francois.
I would just add to anybody who has questions that don't get asked here is do contact us on the website, and we'll be very happy to answer those questions after this.
Yes, thank you, thank you. So the only, yes, Erica, would be lovely to have you. I just asked the last question from Rufus. How does the fund wrap up? Are all the work sold and profits shared out to the token shareholders? Thank you, Rufus.
Actually, yes, the fund is, the works are sold over the course of the fund. And at the end, the money is distributed after each work is sold during the course of the fund, or at the end when the remainder are sold. All of those funds are distributed to both the normal shareholders and the token holders.
Thank you. So now, Erica, please, because it's so nice for people to actually talk. So Erica, welcome.
Hi, welcome. Thank you so much. This has been so incredible. I joined a little bit late, so I hope that my question is a bit relevant. So I am a regulatory attorney. I worked specifically for blockchain in the crypto space. I split my time between the crypto traditional financial markets and advising arts institutions, ultra high net worth collectors, and artists themselves on how to create regulatorily compliant art projects. So this is where my question is coming from. You know, I'm listening to your structure. It's brilliant. I really love the fact that regulatory seems to be at the core of your business model, because from at least a regulatory perspective, what I'm seeing on the forefront with a lot of legislation is a huge push towards regulatory compliance in the art market. But my question specifically is about the institutions you spoke with. You know, I think what I've seen is that the difference between the American institutions and the European institutions falls on the European institutions really focusing on, for example, in Sweden, all the works in the collections of Swedish museums are owned by the Swedish people. So how do you plan on sort of bridging that gap or kind of overcoming that when working with institutions on pieces that may or may not be included in the fund? And if you are intending to work with that, a kind of sub-question is, what have the regulators said from a European versus American perspective about what the audiences who attend these museums should know about those pieces? Are there any marketing stipulations? You know, what are the controls as it relates to what is said about those pieces to the public?
The last part is what is said about these pieces. Well, let's go. Thank you, Erica. Nice to meet you. I don't know whether you're in New York, but if you are in New York, it would be nice to meet. But if you look at the fact that Bermuda Corporation is there, right? The fund is registered in Bermuda, which is a highly regulated environment, and also looking at the European environment. Currently, the investors can invest from America, by the way, also from the Far East, as far as I know. Europe has a different regulatory framework at the moment, but it's coming together. We're of course looking at opening that up together with the regulators in Bermuda.
Brilliant. Goodness, I have so many other questions. I don't want to kind of control this, but Thank you so much for that. I think these institutional pairings are going to be very interesting in the future. Oh, I had one other question I was hoping that you could answer. I kind of dropped it in the chat and we touched upon it, is the fund performance. If you look at the traditional financial markets, things like Morningstar issue fund performance, this could be a really interesting space where building out fund performance, not only from a fund total perspective, but as a artwork. Do you think that this is something that you are looking to do, and how might that change the way that valuation for artists or an artist's work are sort of created if we move towards the securitization of these masterworks?
Sorry, Erica, can you ask?
Yeah. Yes, sorry. So if you were to, if you're taking, like, for a masterwork, for example, and you are tracking the performance of that piece over time, you know, then you could start releasing sort of long-term, you know, performance of these pieces and how that might affect, like, the auction reserves or the auction estimates of these pieces. And it might sort of, you know, create a bit more, you know, historical record that could drive, you know, estimates or you know, help people understand how pieces perform over time. So just bringing a little bit more of the financial sort of stability or, you know, market technology that could help start to price and value these as securities in a way. What are your thoughts on that kind of a structure?
Erica, I totally get your question. Now, we should ask Carolina to have a whole event about this, right? I mean, being in charge of a huge database, we are, of course, looking at how we can use these data to predict, for example, value, et cetera, et cetera. It seems that you know a lot about that as well. It's a different. First of all, we're looking at that because we actually have the data. We even employ people who look at the data that way, and we're talking. Well, we feel that we should start to use those data that way. But I again feel it's a very lucky combination to have and a lot of data, but also understanding of these data, because these data are not always reliable. It's nice to have 50 million or 40 million transaction records. It's only when there's a certain volume that you can actually use these data for exactly what you're saying, right? You can actually create whole patterns of predictions, future valuations, etc. I think it's a great subject, but yes, we're looking at it, but we're also lucky that we have people whose job it is to evaluate art, because with these people, you can look at the data we have and you can build in all kinds of flags. Not enough data. This should actually be researched. But again, I would love to talk about it, but that's a whole subject in itself. And thank God we have these data. So we're working on it. Yeah.
And we can
data is king these days.
Our talk, definitely, Erica. So please do keep in chat on the chat. We have all of the connection to Nanne and Elizabeth and to the art talk. So we would love to know more, and maybe we can create a later art talk. So now,
great connector always, Erica. So yeah.
Yes, and I have actually Alina, who is actually walking outside, but she would love to be here. Thank you, Erica. Thank you so much. So, ecco, Alina is here. Hello, Alina.
Hello, hi. Thank you very much for the interesting presentation. Thank you for Carolina for introduction. I've been working as advising projects on the securitization of the artworks in Europe. So I've been working on the regulatory requirements for 2 years already, and I know I can totally understand what you've been through to prepare this. So I have a lot of questions about like I think we don't have time to go into details, but it's more like a philosophical question. How do you think it will change the whole art market? Because you will have probably in some future a lot of money driven into this, new money. How do you see how do you cap the secondary market transactions? Do you need to do the evaluation of the artwork for each secondary market transaction? And what else? Do you plan to open something in Europe?
Well, for us, it's the trading platforms. If there is a trading platform with the regulatory framework that opens it up completely to Europe, which, by the way, I'm sure that through the Bermuda construction that is possible already or will be possible soon. But will this change the market completely? Do you remember 2 years ago that we were all saying that the NFTs will have a bad influence on the physical art? And what happens? Some of those big collectors in NFTs, and I mean now NFTs as artworks, the NFT art, they started to buy physical art. I believe people investing in a fund like this are incentivized to look at the art market more closely. It's more fun now. You actually invested in art. Although you didn't buy an artwork, you invested in an art fund. But I can imagine that it will actually increase volume for the art market, not only because we have money to buy art, but I think the same kind of investors will most likely also start to buy art. Those things can go hand in hand. Maybe they can invest in an art fund to participate in the upside of an echelon of the market they financially cannot afford, but still want to participate in. And they now feel maybe even much less, how do you say that, uncertain to walk into an auction house and go to, much more confident to go into a viewing and see that there's also art at a different price level that they actually really want to acquire. So, I'm usually not the kind of guy who believes it's black and white. The only time I believe in opaque is when it's not black and white. These things can go hand in hand as well.
Thank you, Nanne. Alina, any other questions? No, I think. But thank you so much. If you like, I don't know if Francesco, I can see him. I got you, Francesco. Ciao.
Bene. I speak English. Sorry, sometimes I forget.
We met in Roma at Deloitte. That's why.
That's exactly.
Bye, Francesco.
No, I just want to say hi to everyone and to Nanne. Congratulate for the new activity.
Yeah, Francesco. Hi. Yeah.
Hi. We are also always in Amsterdam. So if you pass by, do let me know. I have a new office in Oost. So please come for a coffee. We have data if you need some.
I know you have data, and I'll be with the family in Amsterdam, not in Italy, for the holiday. So,
do let me know, and of course I follow with interest all these new activities on fractioning. As a collector, I prefer, of course, to enjoy the full piece. I do understand. The functionality of diversifying in many art pieces and the beauty of not having to deal with the logistics side, which sometimes is heavy. So yes, I enjoyed the conversation, and I wish you the best. And we keep in touch, of course.
Thank you so much. And by the way,
always try to cooperate, of course, with you and Winston. We launch our new analytics on Lotart to track the trends of fine art and watches. So yeah, if maybe we can have a separate call once and discuss if there are rooms for cooperation with pleasure.
Thank you, Francesco. By the way, Francesco is a great example of someone who loves technology, but also knows about a specific segment of the art market and knows that so well that he can actually buy with confidence himself. So that's great.
I created a tool. So now with big data, indeed, of course, you're dealing with it. Big data help to reduce the risk. So as you were talking at the beginning, knowing what you're buying and knowing where it comes from and where the normal the liquidity price range is, helps you, guides you on the purchase or the bidding, and to buy actually an asset which is not only for pleasure but also for investment. With fractioning, of course, you look more at the investment side, but there are a lot of complementarities in what we do. We are also investing in art, so they're two faces of the same coin, and I think
maybe triggered also by Erica, we can have another. We can ask Carolina if she wants to organize another talk, maybe at a certain moment, about art data. That would be interesting.
I think we should, and maybe with the new year, we are, we should do maybe in January. What do you think, Nanne?
Something like that. And then from our end, Lindsay would be, my colleague Lindsay will be in the call, not me.
Okay, va bene. But
I was going to say that
if you
would
need
love
anything from Europe, I would really love to continue the conversation and tell you the projects I've been working on. I've been working for. So yeah, please don't hesitate to contact me.
Thank you.
Grazie, Lina.
I'm based between Paris and Venice, but I'm originally from Moscow. Sorry.
Beautiful cities we cannot miss. And thank you, Alina. Thank you, because we met in Deloitte. So very nice to see you here again. And one last question, I will, because I think Nanne and Elizabeth have been here almost 2 hours. So Sabrina, yes, please.
Hi.
Hello.
Good evening. Yeah. So I work for a small startup called Satellites of Art, and we support artists in emerging countries, making it to the international art market. I saw that Abudia is part of your portfolio. So I was wondering if contemporary African art is really on your radar, especially as this is emerging and there is so much opportunities in that sector.
In a big way, yes. We track a lot of artists, African diaspora artists. Absolutely. Any recommendations? We'd love to hear them.
Thank you, Sabrina. And I think Nanne and Elizabeth, we will set them free, and we will organize a new art talk maybe in the next year. As I said, Nanne and Elizabeth, you are the VIP art talk of this autunno. So we are very, very happy to, that you could join us for the art talks. I really thank you, everyone. It's been an amazing talk. And again, please send us all your feedback and comments. And anyone who can, can join Elizabeth and Nanne into this new venture would be fantastic, and ask more questions. Thank you.
And thank you, Carolina. And all the details are on artorywinston.com. Yeah.